Hoover had been elected as a national hero. During the war, he had organized the Food Administration to make sure everybody ate. And he did a great job. He was very good at this. He was an energetic, positive man. And he talked a lot about endless prosperity. Hoover had believed that we had solved the problems of the economy and we will just continue to get more and more prosperous forever. But Hoover was unable to understand or adjust his worldview to the realities of the Great Depression. Hoover, of course, was elected president in 1928, inaugurated in 1929. He focused on exuding confidence. He really believed that if we told everybody it was okay, if we restored confidence, that could solve the economy. He relied on voluntary cooperation. Hoover did not believe the government had the right to tell businesses to do much of anything. So he would ask them to do things, which they wouldn't do. He begged manufacturers not to cut production or lay off workers, which actually was not entirely that good an idea to begin with, because one of the problems was overproduction. He begged unions not to go on strike, although he didn't actually stop them. He did launch a $423 million jobs program, and he asked state and local governments to chip in to help, but he didn't require them to, and because they weren't bringing in a lot of tax revenue, they didn't help. As the economy got worse, he scaled back and focused on balancing the budget, which is really a terrible idea in an economic downturn. Politicians can't seem to figure that out. But as we're going to find out in the New Deal, that's not a good idea during an economic downturn. Good idea generally, but not then. In April of 1929, the Agricultural Market Act propped up farm prices and gives federal funds to cooperatives and corporations so that they can buy the excess agricultural production, which will keep farm prices up and keep farmers in business. The Hawley-Smoot tariff is passed to help farm prices as well, putting a tariff on imported foods. Both of these failed to prop up farm prices. They continued to collapse. In 1930, the Democrats win big in the congressional elections, and Hoover is personally blamed for the collapse. Hoover's is almost uniquely associated with a disaster in American history simply for being president, which, to be honest, only came along a few months after he was inaugurated. It wasn't really that much his fault. Hoovervilles is the name that people are going to give to these shanty towns that arise of the people who can't find work, where the unemployed live. These people are basically homeless, living in these shanty houses. Hoover flags, that's a term that it means empty pocket. So if you pulled your pockets out so you could see the white of your pockets and show that you have nothing in them, that's a Hoover flag. The economy does begin to recover in early 1931. Hoover declares the economic crisis is over. He says he solved the problem. But an international collapse is going to come along in late 1931 that is going to send the economy into a much deeper depression. Incidentally, this international collapse goes back a lot to our tariff policies and our refusal to renegotiate the debt. So this is also kind of certainly Republican economic policies played a role in that. And this humiliates Hoover. He had been going around all summer telling everybody that the crisis was over. And by December of 1931, Hoover agrees to a Democratic proposal to prop up the banks and to halt foreclosures. In January of 1932, the Reconstruction Finance Corporation provides loans to struggling in businesses and banks. There's about $1.5 billion in loans. So Hoover is essentially trying some of the things that Roosevelt is going to try when he becomes president, just on a very small scale. The Reconstruction Finance Corporation fails because it requires that you put up collateral in order to get the loans, and these people don't have any collateral. So what ends up happening is the money goes to companies that are already solvent, that are already doing fine, because they're the only ones who can provide capital, right? And so the money goes to the largest corporations and banks, and it doesn't go to the struggling businesses that actually need them. He also says that public works projects had to be self-sustaining, meaning that he was only going to give money to public works projects that could pay for themselves. So maybe a toll road or a dam or something like this. And this is just way too limited approach to have any real impact. America was essentially in shock in 1930 and 1931 and doesn't react very strongly to the Depression. Maybe they figured it would get better quickly until 1932. In the summer of 1932, the Farmers Holiday Association, founded in Des Moines, Iowa, attempts to keep farm goods from going to market. They're actually trying to stop farmers from selling their goods in order to try to prop up prices, but this fails. Back in 1924, Congress had approved a $1,000 bonus to World War I vets to be paid in 1945. So you served in World War I when you were a teenager. When you're kind of in retirement age-ish in 1945, you get $1,000. In 1932, a group of World War I veterans got together and they asked Hoover for a reduced amount of this money. So they said, we would not wait till 1945, we would prefer to take a lesser amount now. 20,000 World War I veterans who called themselves the Bonus Expeditionary Force will march to Washington and set up camp in the National Mall. And here you see pictures of their camp, asking Hoover for this money because they can't find jobs. Hoover, some leave in July after Congress votes the proposal down. Congress says they're not going to do it, but many of them stay. Hoover considers them an embarrassment and a political problem, and so he tells the cops of Washington, D.C. to clear them out. Rocks are thrown, shots are fired, and 2 veterans are killed when the police go to remove the bonus army. Hoover calls them uncontrollable, violent, and radical, and sends in U.S. Army troops to clear the World War I veterans off of the National Mall, which is, of course, America's park, essentially. Douglas MacArthur, who we'll talk more about as we go along, is in charge of this operation. By the way, J. Edgar Hoover and Dwight D. Eisenhower both are involved as well. MacArthur exceeds his orders. He sends in the 3rd Cavalry, 2 infantry regiments, a machine gun unit, and 6 tanks down Pennsylvania Avenue to attack World War I veterans. The veterans run, and MacArthur, instead of letting them go, chases them, burns their camp to the ground. More than 100 of our veterans are injured. This will become, for the people of the time, the ultimate symbol of Hoover's out-of-touchness and his inability to deal with the national problem. It destroys Hoover's reputation. The image of American soldiers attacking veterans in front of the Capitol of the United States is just more than the American people can take.